Eric, I am so stoked today, man. We got The Rock on here. We've been talking about increasing the level of guests, and it's cool to have these nutrition gurus, these scientists, and yeah, that's kind of it's fodder for the masses, but what the people really want is the people's elbow. It's The Rock. So why don't you introduce just some of his background before we get into it, man?
So interesting pivot that we're definitely intentionally taking. You could frame it as a good news, bad news situation, but I'm going to frame it as a good news opportunity situation.
Okay.
So do you want to hear the good news first or the opportunity first?
Tell me the good news.
The good news is I have James Creek,
Yeah.
Danny Lennon,
Wow.
Brad Schoenfeld,
Okay.
Joe Klimzeski, Gabriel Fundero, Eric Trexler, Greg Knuckles, and pretty much our entire guest list from all of the 60 episodes we've done to this point ready and on call for a roundtable on literally everything.
Wow.
It's the nutrition, psychology, training, philosophy roundtable. And they've all agreed to be on for 8 hours.
So we have the pantheon of, let's say, sports scientists. That's cool. What about Dwayne? So we were
So that's the opportunity part. So you heard the good news. So there's no reason to be unhappy now because we heard all the good news. The opportunity, which some might frame as the bad news, which I think is not a good framing. Is I haven't heard back from The Rock per se. Meaning that
I could call Eric. No, I could call so let's stop calling him The Rock. Dwayne. He's a personal friend. We've never met in person, but he one time tried to go to Forest Fitness. Therefore, we're close homies. Dwayne. Yeah, this sounds honestly not like him at all. It's not characteristic of him.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know since every message I've sent has either been not seen or unreplied to. But if that's what you say, then yeah, it does seem a little uncharacteristic. But I'm sure he would be on if he'd seen the messages and known that he was on today. But he didn't, so he's not. But that's an opportunity. Like I said, I set up that 18-person, 8-hour roundtable, which I've looked at the demographic numbers. That is the time that I think most people would prefer podcast to last.
Okay, yeah.
Plus or minus 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, Eric, thank you. I understand that. And you know what? I'm going to be the bigger man here and say that Dwayne is probably out saving the world. And so I understand if he maybe, missed one of the text messages. I'll call him after this. Honestly, walking into this, Eric, if I'm being perfectly transparent, I was thinking muscles, and the thought of having that round table normally would excite me. But I have a new rule, heuristic, as Danny Lennon would say, that I basically don't trust people unless they're below 7% body fat. And so I probably don't want any of them on the episode today, if that's okay. And that's why you are my best friend, and I could say that out loud, because I just picture the muscles. I mean, you sent me some of the workout clips where you're getting swollen the Shire. And, if I can't have Dwayne, I guess we're just going to have to do a duo episode.
Well, hey, I think between the two of us, if you add all our muscle mass together, then, and you just don't add the body fat together, and you take whichever one is lower, that might put us around 7% body fat. At a combined body weight of, I don't know, like 280 pounds, then we're pretty much Mr. Olympia together, minus one of our body fats.
Some would say stuck together, and this is the last just housekeeping duty before I have an idea for a duo episode we can do. And that is, I was informed by one of our lovely listeners, a member of the cult, that the classic seminal early 2000s film, Stuck Together, and we've been calling it Stuck Together, is actually called Stuck on You. And we've actually been incorrect every single time. And to that listener, sir, I just want to say that was a test and you passed, because you know the first rule. It's kind of like Fight Club of this podcast. And we already explained the relativity concept, right? Where truth is subjective for you, objective for us. And so what you hear might not be how it actually is. That was a test for you and you passed. And we're willing to offer you, passage into the inner sanctum of what will soon be the Masculinity in Crisis tour in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like Willy Wonka at the end, where he's testing all the kids out, setting them up tubes, damn near killing them, threatening them with their lives. And then at the end, the boy of pure heart gets invited into the inner sanctum. That's him.
Yep. You found the Easter egg,
Yeah.
aka us just simply being wrong, which, as we discussed, is actually not technically possible. So there's a paradox right there for you. Mm-hmm. And your reward for this golden ticket, if you will, a la Willy Wonka, is to pay us money to come to the tour, which may or may not happen. Yeah. So congratulations, listener.
Oh, we'll get your name. Don't worry, in the show notes. I will say that the last episode, Eric,
or at least we'll get your PayPal address.
Yeah, no, we need the money up front. Eric,
100%.
Eric, these are different times. Here's one of our rules on Iron Culture: money up front. Oh, you want me to do that?
That's right.
Yeah, I need to see the dollar bills rain. Cash is king, as we know. There's several rules, new rules. I will say that it appears that our previous episode where we talked about COVID-19, not the virus itself, because, hey, fun fact, we're not epidemiologists. We're not trying to go outside of our scope of practice. I noticed there's some individuals online saying, is this a hoax? What's going on? And I think to myself, I weep for humanity. No. Yeah, no, it's not. But we provided some useful information in regards to training. You provided some of the science, what the literature indicates when it comes to potential muscle atrophy. That some people, they walked away, Eric, from that episode being, reinforced, reinvigorated with their goals. And I think we could do the damn near same thing today with nutrition. Before we do that and we really get into the nitty gritty, I want to say I saw a little post, Eric, that you made. Nutrition Coaching Global Mastermind. I honestly probably butchered it because you know what? I'm not great.
You know.
Oh, woo. If it's musical intervals, we're talking 1, 3, 7, 13s. I'm good. 4 words at once. It's like, that's why in rap songs when they start spelling things out, I'm like, please slow down. Oh no, I'm listening to the melody here. So when you gave me 4 words and I noticed it, I said, I know what type of people are joining this. It seems like you're taking, let's say, the industry to the next level, and I'm being 100% serious when I say it. We dance back and forth. We'll have some banter. We'll be playful, but I want to be serious here now for a second, my friend. This is something that we had Dr. Joe on. Can you just give me a brief rundown of what this new initiative you're doing, what it's all about? Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually it's very timely. And it's appropriate for this episode. Like if you look at the logo of NCGM, the G and the C are kind of like connected, and it looks like the word nom, like nom, which is what a lot of people are doing right now as they're stuck at home and dealing with their existential crisis, their nom-nomming, which we're going to have a large discussion about. So anyway, Dr. Joe Klimzeski, I never pronounced it right, just to show how close our partnership is.
Eric,
he contacted me.
I was just going to say, that's why I didn't say his last name. I'm like, I'm not going to risk this one, buddy.
You know what? We're among the masses who say it wrong. So I almost think it's a badge of honor. You're welcome, Dr. Joe. So he contacted me end of last year, and he thought it'd be really cool and important, given that our field changes very quickly, and that the explosion of nutrition coaching has happened a lot in the last few years with the explosion of Instagram and social media, that it might be really important to try to create a unifying professional development body. So what we're trying to do is create these monthly webinars where a group of nutrition professionals across the full spectrum of what you might deal with as a nutritional coach. If we look at our board, we've got folks with RDs, MDs, PhDs, just lots of letters after names that give people a background in terms of nutrition psychology, clinical nutrition, and actual nutrition science, and also folks who are just very experienced coaches who built their business, Paul Revelia as an example, and get them all together and do topical webinars on a monthly basis related to professional development, both continuing education, evidence-based practice, but also how to make sure that you're in line with any policy, regulatory bodies, scope of practice that does come out. It's actually really timely. The reason why I think it's useful talking about it now, this is something that I was talking to Nick Licamelli about. You might remember him from being on the Pain Roundtable. He's has a doctorate in physical therapy. He's a practicing physical therapist out in New Jersey, and he also consults with us at 3DNJ. And he started before COVID his own telehealth practice. So he's working on seeing people online. and doing what he can as a physical therapist there. And there was a lot to navigate for him. That was a big learning experience, is how are you as an allied health professional going to operate online? Now, here comes big bad corona, and all of a sudden that's what everyone has to do and is forced to do it. And all of these educational bodies, regulatory bodies, governments, and oversight committees are all basically launched and accelerated 5-10 years in the future. And they're always behind because, innovation tends to move faster than bureaucracy. So surprising, right? But now that everyone is forced to deliver things over Zoom, over Skype, online, and figure out ways to do what they can without having face-to-face contact, at least in real life, with the social distancing measures that we have in place, and not knowing how long they're going to be in place, or whether or not we're going to have multiple waves of COVID or not, I think we're going to see an acceleration of any potential regulation or changes in our industry as the government has to think more and more about, and these oversight bodies, okay, well, what do we need to do if people are doing this online? Even though it's been a thing for almost 20 years, 25 years, I think that's when Dr. Joe first started doing online coaching. Now it is a thing in the eyes of the powers that be. So anyway, we thought it would be really valuable and helpful to get professionals who are in the know and across the spectrum of nutrition coaching to talk about these issues and try to keep our finger on the pulse of the industry and help the people who sign in our webinars be aware of what's coming down the pipe. And maybe, since if we can position ourselves in the right way, if changes do come, be in a place to maybe be grandfathered in or actually have a positive influence so that the industry goes in a direction that's favorable for coaches and also our clients.
This boy really done did it. Eric had the foresight, and you're hearing it first. I am stoked for this. You and Dr. Joe. It almost seems prescient now that COVID has hit, where people almost seem surprised, obviously, with what's going on with their careers or the shift towards online. And the fact that, if some of what Eric said might sound a little bit confusing, it's kind of like this. In most other professions, there are regulatory bodies, there are standards of practice that you have to adhere to. The government also, there is some oversight. The fitness industry kind of as a whole is kind of like the Wild West, right? Where you go online, you start, you're a nutrition coach, and it's hard for, let's say, an individual that tries to discern who's good and who's not good. It's like, well, wait, this person looks ripped, therefore I should listen to them. And so setting up some of these systems in place for those that want to either better their knowledge or understand what's coming up, what's coming down the pipeline in terms of the government or different regulations, and just having access to people at the tippity top of the field to be able to communicate with them on some sort of basis, participate in the webinars, I think it is, like I said, a little prescient for the times and something that will become more standardized in the future. So individuals that are looking to kind of stay on top of things, increase kind of their knowledge overall. Where it's like, wait, I'm not just an online coach. You mean I can't just say any claim that I want and it's going to work like that? What, Eric, then, or some of the webinars, what are they going to include? Can you give me just like a little taster's treat before we go on?
Yeah. So our first couple, we're going to be discussing what evidence-based practice is, and we're going to do kind of like an in-house webinar with the like half the board members, and also one that's going to be hosted by myself, one's going to be hosted by Dr. Joe. We're all going to be there, but yeah, just it's pretty cool. I'm excited to have these webinars with our board members because they're people I tremendously respect. So we've got Eric Trexler, Stronger by Science, PhD in nutrition scientist. We've got Dr. Gabrielle Fendero. She did her PhD in nutrition science, expertise in the gut microbiome, as well as a lot of knowledge, as you might remember from our intuition episode on intuitive eating, weight neutral approaches, and eating psychology. Also, Corey Probst, who is a health psychologist and former high-level nutrition competitor and physique competitor and very experienced nutrition coach herself. We've also got Dr. Jennifer Souders, and I emphasize doctor because she's an MD and specifically is an expert in the area of the intersection of legality and medical practice. And we've got, like I said, Paul Revelia. So it's a really good lineup. It's a lot of people who are very influential. For example, we have Brian St. Pierre, who is an RD, MS, and he's kind of the head honcho right now behind Precision Nutrition. So we've got the Diet Doc, 3DMJ, Stronger by Science, representatives from Renaissance Periodization and Precision Nutrition. So it covers a lot of corners of the industry, and we're going to be discussing, what it is to do evidence-based practice and in what things we need to understand as it relates to scope of practice. And I don't like the last thing I want to do is be alarmist, but I think, like you said, that prescient element, it's very much Dr. Joe. He's been in the industry a long time. And like we're seeing some things now where regulatory bodies are becoming aware of how Wild Westy it is. Yeah. Like we've had district attorneys saying they would prosecute people who are posting on social media that their program or their supplement or whatever can protect you against COVID.
Right.
But like that might be new to this prosecutor who's now stuck at home and being aware on IG and getting messages. But as you know, and I know, unfortunately, like the fit tea world is huge. It's been there. Yeah. There are people making claims about certain diets preventing and curing cancer. There are literally YouTubers who have died refusing to get treatment for cancer and saying, no, instead I'm going to follow X nutrition plan. And then, people selling supplements, people selling snake oil, that it has been an only increasing prevalence. And I think now that there is a little more awareness, we can expect there to be a little more oversight. These gears are already turning. I've been involved with some folks in Australia who have been trying to carve out a niche for sports nutritionists to actually get insurance that will protect them. To make sure that and a defined scope of practice, because there's been an increase in the number of fitness professionals and trainers who've been getting sued and getting scope of practice violation related lawsuits and negligence in Australia. And that's just one example. So like it's a really quickly changing sphere. And that's really nothing new from our perspective. But I think it's important if you're going to be someone who is working with people's nutrition. And we've talked about this before, like it is for most people, not the iron cult, optional to go out there and decide to lift weights. Of course, we need to do that. It's our lifeblood. But it is not optional to eat. So everyone out there who is coaching nutrition, sometimes they see it. Like you go to the website, hey, you can either get nutrition coaching or training coaching. And they're seen as almost on this level playing field of similar things, adjuncts to your life. We're adding this on. But the reality is that when you manipulate someone's nutrition, you're manipulating their culture, their emotions, and their actual health, rather than maybe increasing their activity or helping them have higher bone mineral density or something like that. Like if you don't train, you're not as healthy. If you don't eat, you die. So
allegedly,
I mean, I've heard some Eritreans and folks who believe that our cells can capture energy from photosynthesis, But again, that's probably why we need more oversight, or at least there will be. Yeah. So anyway, I just think it's a really interesting time for it to happen. At first I was like, oh man, this is a less than ideal environment to try to launch this initiative. Like nutrition coaching and fitness trainers they're hurting right now. They're making a lot less money. But that's why we dropped the price to just like literally. This isn't about money. Like we want people to do better. We want to help more people and prevent harm. So that's like we're offering the first two webinars for $1. So I think we probably would have gone free, but the actual platform doesn't allow you to do that. But anyway, the point is we're trying to get a high level of uptake, inform a lot of people, prove scope of or aware people of their scope of practice, and then improve best practice. And so anyway, that's my soapbox that I'll get off now.
No, Eric, let me just say, so I was the one that proposed. I'm like, I think this would be cool to mention this on Iron Culture, because low key, Eric is out here, I know for damn near 10 years, positively changing the industry. And as soon as something, yes, okay, I'm guru following you. But as soon as I know Eric's name is on something, you are a trustworthy individual. You hold yourself to a high standard. And as you said before, like you're joking when you say this, but one of the things I love about Eric, he loves to lose money, where he's not a profit-driven person. I think you should, if for people, you could try, as you said, the first two webinars, they're $1, which is an insane price. I do think you should make $1 as opposed to free, because oftentimes, and we could have a whole conversation on this, and I think another, episode on business practices or what we're doing or other people in this time that would be relevant or at least tangentially related for individuals that want to go out there and try and maintain their business. I think right now we know this, Eric, that if you offer something for free, what would tend to happen is they don't see the value in it, right? So if you offer something for free, they're like, oh, wait a second, I'll just take advantage of this. Where I had that happen where I ran some strength classes, and some individuals would say on occasion that once again, oh, I can't go anymore. I don't have the money. I said, oh, that's cool. You know what? Here's for free. Come for free for 3 months. It's on me. No worries. I actually probably, I'd say 70 to 80% of them stopped coming. So it wasn't even a financial consideration. So, anyways, all that to say, this isn't a crazy profit-driven thing. I think that what I like is that you're trying to affect change from the bottom up, and you're informing individuals. And I think a lot of people, once again, that enter just the industry don't realize all these levels or all these considerations. And some people are operating one outside of their scope of practice. They simply don't know, right? Because for most of us,
absolutely,
there's the huge turnaround, Eric, where you do, for the average trainer, I think the majority are in and out in 3 years. And so they look at it as almost a side business or a nutritionist where they enter this. The online field is kind of like the Wild West, and you see these outlandish claims. So I think it is very important in these times, and we're seeing this once again in a lateral conversation, some of the discussions we're seeing surrounding COVID-19 by people that are not professionals, right? That are not epidemiologists, virologists, statisticians. They're not dealing with anything related to it at all, contributing to the social sphere, why these things become important. And so I think it's fantastic that you're doing it. And I can say once again, I'm not compensated in any way. I wanted to mention this. I think it's very important. I think it's a high utility for people listening. Good on you, Eric, for this Nutrition Coaching Global Mastermind. Very catchy name, by the way. My hat's off to you. Where can people go ahead and join if they want to try out the first few webinars? It's $1, which you'd be a fool to pass this up. Where would they go?
There you go, to nutritioncoachingglobal.com.
Okay.
That is the website. So nutritioncoachingglobal.com.
Love it. And I would say that this is timely and relevant to everything that we are going to discuss also in the future. And there's been a through thread when it comes to iron culture of trying to better oneself. So we talk about physically, we talk about mentally, but then also professionally, right? Where oftentimes, like even the supplement episode, it was, Eric, totally a conversation on supplements, but it's kind of a conversation on being an entrepreneur, right? And this is just another, let's say, aspect. If you plan on being here right now for some time, and I can only assume, I'm like, you're listening to 2-hour episodes. We've done 60 episodes, and we have all these messages by people that you're about this damn life. And so if you want to stay up to date, this makes too much sense. You are capping it at 5,000 people, which I do think you guys will reach the cap. And this is right now, it's being released about 6 days after we record it. You just announced this. So I think people should kind of act now and go to the website. We'll include it in the show notes. So on iTunes, if you're listening, I think we're able to include that. On Spotify, if we can. YouTube, definitely, it'll be the top link. If you're just like, oh, wait a second, I forgot what it is. Eric Helms, if you're not following him on Instagram, I question your overall life choices. And if you just don't want to even see that eye candy, which I think you should post more shirtless photos, but I might be biased. You go on his social media, you click on the link tree, and there will be. Eric, my friend, before we continue with the episode, is there anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, I think when this comes out, it'll be the day before our second webinar, which is still, you can just get for $1. Because basically we're doing them monthly eventually, but right now we're doing 2 weeks back to back. So we're doing one that has already happened when you're hearing this, the Tuesday before this episode, and then we're doing one tomorrow, Tuesday in the States, which will be out. So I think you should still be able to get that one if you check it out. And of course, you get all of them on replay. Like, even though we're going to do monthly webinars after that, it's not like you have to tune in at exactly the time when we're on. We understand that there's people who that might be 1 a.m. for, depending on their location. But yeah, appreciate the love and the shout out, and yeah, just trying to do our part to lift the whole industry up and help more people.
Eric, one more time, the website.
nutritioncoachingglobal.com.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're in it. Again, show notes. Let us now begin. So once again, let me give you a scenario here. Dig, if you will, this picture. It's been 3 weeks, Eric. By the time this episode drops, probably 4 weeks, which is just shy of a month, since people now have been in isolation, denied from the gym. And there's that cascading effect that tends to occur when a huge variable is changed. You go from having this place where you relieve your stress, where it's kind of your happy place. You go there 3, 4, 5, if you're a loser like me, 6 times per week to the gym. And then you think to yourself, wow, I have a lot of free time on my hands. A lot of individuals, unfortunately, they have been laid off, or even if, let's say, you're going to school, you're now doing online classes, you have more free time on your hands. You're in your house far more often. And for some people, the relationship with food in general, maybe it might not be super healthy overall, where there's some, what we'll see now in these trying times as there's more pressure is some of the cracks, right? Of some of the strategies where people, it's like, well, normally I might be in a household. Let me give you a situation that's pretty common probably for a lot of listeners. I am in a household where there's other individuals. Shocker, I don't live alone. And there are people making food choices that are not exactly compliant or not exactly congruent with my goals. There's pizza, Eric, in front of me. I'm smelling it. I'm feeling sorry for myself. Here I go again. Whitesnake the song on full blast. Down on this lonely road that I've been before. Double cheese, double stuffed pizza. This isn't a personal story, Eric. It sounds hyper specific, but I'm just being very general here. Pizza Nova, you could smell it when you walk. Anyways, very, very general story. But, this is a trying time, and this is a time where, once again, there's a little bit extra adversity, and we could try and cultivate some more discipline in order to get through it. I think it would make sense to talk about nutrition today. You being a coach, you doing the damn thing, you maybe having, some science degrees and some practical experience. You could help the people out where this, for some people, let's say, they have been down this road before, or in similar situations where they're not optimal scenarios, but you make the most out of it, or you're pulled away from your comfort zone. I could only think of bodybuilders, prepping for a show. Nothing's optimal at that point. When you're 8 weeks out and your stomach's on fire, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, so correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, but the hunger hormones, they're kind of getting out of whack. You're being probably more food focused than you like to admit. You're almost wondering because you have some lethargy going on. You're just hoping that the thing to be over, but you want to complete it. So you have these conflicting emotions. I mean, that's adversity right there. So I think a portion of the listeners can relate to what we're about to talk about, or once again, they've been there before. Can you just give a brief rundown, Eric, of what maybe some of the obstacles, so set it up for people. What are some of the obstacles people are facing that, one, they might be aware of or might not be aware of? And then let's talk some of the strategies to help them out.
Absolutely. I think it's a great preamble. I think you're probably not the only one listening to Whitesnake while eating white sauce pizza, feeling as though, like a pizza delivery man, you were born to walk alone.
A very general example, Eric. It was not specific. I don't know why I keep feeling the need to clarify that, but yeah, it happens to everyone.
Like I said, you're not the only one.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think a very general example, because probably most people have been in that very specific general example. So yeah, this is an interesting, challenging time because it's going to be a shift to pretty much everyone's reality with food. Even if you are someone who normally eats at home, stays home a lot, cooks a lot of your own meals, there are changes, like there's different things available at the grocery market. You can't get takeout as easily. Or you may be someone who is used to traveling and eats a lot when you travel, or eats a certain way when you travel, and now there's no travel, So I can almost guarantee that most people have seen some degree of change. The magnitude probably varies a lot. Your mileage may vary here. But I think, much like we discussed in our training episode, just this last episode that we did, there are going to be some people who really struggle in these times, and other who, like you said, end up thriving. And, there's nothing wrong with either one, because people are being differentially affected by this. We're all being affected, but some people are quite literally trying to survive, and other people are, this is not a huge change for them. Maybe they're a game designer who has their own garden. Like, life doesn't change much. Or you live out in the wilderness and you train outside and do strongman training anyway, or you have a home gym and not much has changed. So for some people, this is literally just something they're seeing on TV. For others, it is drastically affecting their lives. Maybe they've even lost family members. So I think one of the ways that people cope with things is through food. Like I said before, when you're manipulating food and when you're seeing your emotions become more tumultuous, that often affects things. You'll hear people talk about being stress eaters, or you'll hear people talk about when I'm really stressed, I simply don't eat. I can't eat anymore. I'm depressed. And you will see either weight gain or sometimes loss of body mass in different people, depending on what they're dealing with emotionally. So I think what might be helpful is if we understand all the mechanisms and components that go into what results in your hunger being a little different in this environment. So one of the things that I can definitely say is being affected for most people is that their activity levels are going down. And I think often in the evidence-based community, sometimes we think of like this energy in, energy out as these independent sides of an equation, and we think of it very black and white. If one number is greater than the other, gain weight. If one number is smaller than the other, lose weight, and that's all there is to it. But in reality, it is not a math game that most people play. Sure, we might do that as, like you said, a contest prep bodybuilder, but we're doing that and following these external cues and tracking food and controlling our calorie intake and counting our steps and estimating our energy expenditure because we're trying to game a system that is normally operating on all these subconscious cues that is resulting in behavior. We can't just live our lives and get shredded. We have to exert some type of external control to manage these internal signals like what you said are going way out of whack and hunger signals are getting out of control. So what is the interplay between physical activity and hunger? Well, there's been some interesting research in this. I don't think I brought it up on Iron Culture, but there's what's known as the J-shaped relationship between physical activity, hunger, and body weight. So there was a classic study. I'm saying classic, but it's a
classic.
What is probably it's a classic. It's a prominent study in this field where they looked at factory workers. They had low, moderate, and high energy expenditure factory workers, and also the managers who were classified as sedentary. And if you just look at the low, moderate, and high activity, all of them are pretty high activity when it comes to comparing just a Western society. You would see basically a very linear graph of energy intake and activity. So as they got more active, they ate more, meaning that hunger was appropriate for their given level of activity, and they maintained energy homeostasis and body weight homeostasis. And all of them weighed the same amount, whether they were low, moderate, or high activity. The groups, on average, had a very similar body weight. So meaning that being more and more active just resulted in you eating more, right? And matching your energy expenditure. And some people in the scientific community and more so in the general media blogosphere have characterized this as saying, hey, therefore, activity and exercise is not an efficient weight loss tool because you'll just eat more to compensate for your energy. And in a very, very, very narrow sense, just looking at the mathematics of this, that could be construed to have some elements of truth. But I don't think that's a very helpful statement. Because if you look at people who successfully maintain weight loss, the story becomes very different. And what we have seen time and time again is that people in a Western society who struggle with obesity are not necessarily incapable of losing weight. They're incapable of maintaining weight loss. And most people you've talked to, they're getting this almost PTSD relationship with weight loss because they do it and they regain it. And sometimes it's worse than before. They do it and they regain it. And most of the time what happens is there's temporary weight loss, but these long-term negative relationships they develop with the process of trying to lose weight, their body, and nutrition. So it's really unfortunate that we see disordered eating, body image issues, and unsuccessful long-term weight loss. But if you look at those who are successful at weight loss maintenance, one of the most strongest elements of predicting that they're successful there is maintaining a physically active lifestyle. So instituting some type of exercise, regardless of what it is, and then maintaining it in the long term is highly correlated and predictive of having a greater chance of maintaining the lost weight. And now we can get back to that J curve, because what I described didn't sound like a J. It was just a straight line. Now, if you look to the left of those low physical activity workers, and we see the sedentary individuals, the office managers, now that straight line tips up, and we see this J-shaped-ish thing that's kind of a J, slightly tilted to the side, but hey, scientists aren't alphabet writers. Give us a break. All right, so now we've got these sedentary individuals, and lo and behold, they are intaking a similar amount of calories to the moderate and the high activity factory workers, and their body weight is not equal to the other three groups. It's actually much higher. They're often dealing with being in the obesity or overweight classification. So what's going on here? Well, it seems that when someone is actually sedentary and below a certain quote unquote normal level of activity, and I say quote unquote normal because modern society has greatly changed, and now what is normal is unfortunately mostly sedentary, uh, that you get a dysregulation of hunger and satiety. Satiety takes longer to set in, hunger is slightly more elevated on a regular basis, and there's this dysregulation of your ability to moderate your energy intake. And that is also explaining why maintaining a higher activity level actually helps you maintain weight loss. Because it clearly doesn't result in weight loss if you just look at those high and moderate activity factory workers. But once the weight is lost, and then you maintain a certain level of energy expenditure, now all of a sudden we see weight loss maintenance. Because your body doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, want you to be obese. It is just much easier to achieve that point in an obesogenic environment where you are confronted with really tasty foods, very, very poignant smells, low cost, constant food access and availability, and you're also not regulating your hunger very well because you're sedentary. So this is one of those factors which I think is really important, which people are probably struggling right now, is that even though their step count is lower, even though their total energy expenditure is lower, they're probably at least as, if not more hungry than they were, and they have idle time on their hands. And if they're also emotionally stressed and they tend to be an emotional eater, they're basically getting a triple whammy. One, I'm simply not burning as many calories. So every time I eat, it's more likely to put me in a surplus. Two, I'm more hungry and less satiated when I eat. And three, I may be emotionally stressed and I am bored and I have time on my hands, so I may turn to the fridge. So a lot of people are definitely struggling with eating right now for those reasons.
Eric, I am going to paraphrase the quote, one of my favorite quotes from Iron Culture thus far, which was James Krieger, who essentially postulated that obesity might be a natural consequence of capitalism. Where he essentially said, he's like, man, when you got that low cost food, is what you're basically saying. McDonald's, you pass by it, the marketing's really slick, you want to go ahead and eat it. You're now sedentary, so you have extra time on your hands. It's a tough situation. And that's why I look forward to us talking about actual practical strategies to try and get people on track. I do want to say something briefly, and that is I felt there was a mismatch, and I'm glad we had Dr. Gabrielle Fandaro on to talk about kind of intuitive eating or, essentially not tracking calories, coming towards a more sustainable nutrition paradigm, which I think you might know a thing or two about, Eric. But I've seen online where people would state once again, and there's a mismatch between, I would say, the creator and then the end user, where once again, someone would say, and it's in particular parts of the fitness industry, they talk about the concept of intuitive eating. And what I would see in some of the comments, just observing, being an outside observer, you have someone who is pretty damn fit, in shape. They've made activity a part of their life, their daily existence. So as you said, there's a pairing between how many calories they feel like they want to eat and how many they're expending. So they might be in homeostasis, but as you stated, if they've already lost the weight, they're maintaining the weight. That's fantastic. That's exactly what they want to do, because as you become more active, it's more likely that pairing will make sense. But there's a large swath of people probably listening to them. And I know this just because, like, I've seen comments on YouTube as an example underneath some of my videos, and someone's like, man, I don't even train, I just like watching your videos. We could, if there's 100%, we can never assume there's 100% of people that are being quite active when they watch anyone's content and listen to social media. There's a certain portion of the population that probably struggle to make exercise or any daily activity. So I'm not saying a regimented routine like going to the gym, maybe just walking 10,000 steps, or maybe participating in some sort of sport, doesn't matter. But activity, unfortunately, in modern society, they're sedentary. And so you're getting this top-down advice from someone who is quite active, right? And when they say intuitive eating, it makes sense for them because what they feel their satiety signals makes sense in terms of the amount of calories they need to eat, or roughly, approximately, makes more sense. But kind of that J curve, the initial part where it's spiked up for people that are sedentary, they're not really good at figuring out how many calories they need, because they might think to themselves, I'm actually a little bit hungry right now. I'm like, are you actually hungry right now? Are you just bored? What's going on here? And so they're getting mixed signals, and their satiety levels or what they feel might not be an accurate indicator of what they need. And so in certain ways, in certain situations, I could see it being maybe potentially harmful for some people, where there's just a mismatch, right, between what someone's recommending and where someone's starting out. And in that way, Eric, now that you kind of set up the scenario here, so you said for people, you know what? Hey, these are tough times. And they're probably actually even if you've been struggling, they're even tougher. And you stated before, a lot of people that successfully lose weight, unfortunately, they gain it back. And it makes me think about that episode we had with Cliff Harvey, where he was talking about the different psychology of lifters and when people eat food, the more moderate perspective, more versus the
Moderators
absolute.
versus abstainers.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. Where I think to myself, lifting is kind of funny, where you really have to screw it up to make it have a negative impact on yourself. And some people listening are like, just watch me, bro. I'm going to go for this 1 rep max, even though I shouldn't. But it's like, pretty much in most situations, even if you're obsessive, you have certain personality components that make you obsessive. What you do in the gym will largely have a positive impact on you. It's a different situation when it comes to nutrition. And it's probably harder now. I would, this is just conjecture on my part, but it's probably harder now to be, let's say, in a more sustainable paradigm with your nutrition versus keeping active. Because in some capacity, you probably will, do some sort of physical activity. I'm talking going for a walk. Shit, that counts, right? But adhering to some sort of nutrition outline that makes sense for you, that aligns with your goals, that's tough. So, Eric, now that you've indicated that the deck might be stacked up next to them, we're going to roll a saving throw here for everyone here. Set them up now for some of the things that they should do or be aware of in order to, surmount this seemingly insurmountable obstacle.
Yeah, great way to frame that. You said some really valuable things there. You started with going full 1 rep max, 1 rep marks, I should say. Karl Marx on this anti-capitalism, or rather the natural consequence of capitalism is obesity. But another way to look at it, like we said, the deck is stacked. Yeah. But like I said before, not everyone is necessarily struggling to the same degree, which means there's more than one deck out there, and there is multiple decks that kind of are the archetypal things we're seeing out there. And in some ways, you could also argue that the deck is stacked in your favor, and then we can identify which elements are actually problematic and which things are actually a blessing in disguise that might be helping you with energy regulation in such times. So, sure, everything I said before is true. Your inability to be active, if you have an emotional relationship with food, if you've got time on your hands, and you've got food in the fridge, you've got some issues. However, as we discussed, and you brought up Dr. Fundero, we talked about intuitive eating, and we talked about people who seem to be able to maintain a certain body weight. There's two pathways I want to take. For one is that you can overdo the whole physical activity thing. And you do especially see this in people who they're really lean, they're highly active, and they're giving you this Instagram glorified, the right filter kind of approach to their whole life that makes it seem like life is great, but they're clocking 15,000 steps and eating 2,800 calories a day and working out 6 days a week, and they're quote unquote comfortable at a sub 10% body fat for a male, or maybe mid-teens for a female. But in reality, they're actually always hungry. Yeah. And they are probably not intuitive eating by any means. They are habituated to a certain way of living, which they can barely hold on to, or causes them stress, and maybe it may not even be healthy. So a good way to look at this is the difference between the Amish and the Hasda. So there is some interesting epidemiological data on one of the few remaining hunter-gatherer groups in the world. And let me just first say, I am not an expert in this area. I have read the research, and I do think I understand how it applies to the Western world and fitness, but I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this topic. So if anyone is a researcher on this, I'm going to try not to step too much into the area of anthropology or sociology, but it's a necessary logical leap I must make, and there may be some errors here, so grain of salt, but I'm going to try to keep it on point. So the Hasda, very interesting. They are smaller, which is almost always true if you look at the history of humans. Only once we got at a population level appropriately nourished did we see heights and weights go up, and then the weights kept going up, unfortunately, and not because our height kept going up. This is the obesity epidemic we're talking about here. But a mark of during feudalism, you would only see people who were overweight and tall in the upper class, among the the ruling class. And a lot of the things like being plump or getting something like gout were seen as like rich person's diseases, right? So anyway, going back to why this matters, if you look at the Hazda, they are of lower stature, lower body weight than the Western world, but incredibly more physically active. They spend, at least the males, spend a large portion of their day in light to moderate activity, going out and doing hunting and gathering. Ironically, though, when you correct for body weight, their energy expenditure is the same as the Western world. So what the hell's going on there? Well, it means that they're compensating in many, many other ways. And these are very lean people, they're very active, but they're not necessarily well nourished. And what is happening here is it's showing you that if you're in a constant state of low energy availability and you have to work really, 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 really hard for every unit of food, and it's not necessarily a well balanced diet, that you're also seeing some of this effect of what's known as the constrained energy model, is that our body is doing everything it can to prevent you from burning too many calories because you literally will not survive, and neither will your tribe because you're the one who's out getting food for them. And you won't be able to feed new children, et cetera, and you see the tribe collapse. So there is a constrained model that we see here to where other physiological processes can be compromised in the face of huge amounts of physical activity and an incomplete diet and a mismatch between them. And you are seeing that on a much more micro level in some of these influencers who are maintaining a really lean physique and painting a rosy picture, but are actually really hungry and are basically just maintaining a subclinical eating disorder many times. Then we look at the Amish, and this is another basically throwback on our times, but not as far of a throwback to hunter-gathering. This is post-agricultural, but still highly active physical society. And now you see individuals, and of course there's a lot of diversity among the Amish. I don't want to make them sound like they're a monolith or making incorrect statements about their culture. So just reading some research here. And again, I'm not a sociologist, so there's my disclaimer. But in some of the studies I've seen, the men, the lowest activity levels you'll see is still over 10,000 steps. Because farming is sure, it's it's a little better than running around trying to find what animals and what fruits and berries you can gather. But it's certainly not easy work. It takes a huge amount of activity, and then everything else, the chores, all the things that we take for granted. There's no dishwashers, there's no dryers, there's no any of the stuff that we have in modern life, not there. So you're looking at a minimum of 10,000 steps per day just to get the daily work done. That's not even exercising, and sometimes reaching 20, 25, 30,000 steps a day is just part of life. And I'm not suggesting that as an intervention. In fact, don't do that. But the point is that these people are not short. They're not malnourished. They do have a steady supply of food due to them being a post-agricultural society. But the men, on average, are like 7 to 8% body fat. So it is definitely a thing, they're active and they're well nourished, and they're good to go. But they eat a lot of calories. We're talking high 3,000s, low 4,000s, not 2,800 and trying to stay leaner than they should be. But this is just where they are due to the demands of their society. Women are a little bit higher in body fat, and that's because the Amish are a little more confined to that same era's gender roles, but they're still highly active. I mean, there's still a lot for them to do, not quite as much, and their body fat levels are more on par with healthy individuals not who are part of the obesity epidemic in modern society, but they're not super, super lean like the men are on average. But nonetheless, this is going to show you that if you take it too far, and if you're malnourished and highly active and you're trying to stay too lean, that's a problem. But if you are active, you are exercising, and you are well nourished and eating a well-rounded diet, you can see that without exerting will, without trying to be in a state of dieting, you will be walking around probably at the leanest body composition your body feels quote unquote healthy at. And that's something that we haven't seen in the Western world for probably 50, 60 years now, at least to that same degree. And that just goes to show you how important and how powerful activity is. Now, that's that one aspect that I wanted to track down. And you're probably sitting here going, well, that's great, Eric, but I'm stuck in my house and I have a 600 square foot apartment. So that doesn't help me at all. I'm not allowed to leave the house or only for essential services. Well, here are some other ways the deck might be stacked in your favor. For one, we also know that people tend to eat 90 to 95% of what's put on their plate. Now, the reason why restaurants and eating out are dangerous is not just because the chefs make it taste really good, it's hyper palatable, and they sneak in a lot of calories. And you might look at something that's prepared by two different chefs, but it looks visually the same, and there could be a 50% difference in calories depending on how much oil and butter is put in there and how it's prepared. And that is a thing, that is a problem, and it is true that most people underestimate the calories they eat out by about 50%. That's true. That's empirically something that's been observed when looking at people eating out and estimating their intake. But there's more to it than that. Is that you don't load up your own plate. You don't pull out of the fridge the amount of food you want and put amount that you think you're going to eat on your plate. At home, you get to actually control your portion sizes. Yeah, you'll clean your plate, but you're also the one putting the food on the plate based on the estimation of how hungry I am. So when you're preparing your own food, there's this auto-regulated aspect of you eating how much you think you want to eat. Now, this doesn't apply to snacking or taking a trip or seeing, taking a trip to the pantry and seeing, M&Ms next to what you were going to grab or whatever, or being bored and just grabbing food randomly because you need something to do and you want to eat something tasty. But if you were just to simply not eat out and eat at home, a lot of people in the traditional evidence-based community, they would ascribe those improvements to just the fact that there are more calories in eating out. But what I would say, what's probably a larger factor is that when you eat at home and you prepare foods for yourself, there's that more of that element of that auto-regulation. There's not a disconnect. It's not someone else trying to give you a really good restaurant experience. You'll come back and give you really tasty food and overfeed you, and so you feel like you've really gotten a lot of dollar value. Instead, it is you at home being mindful, being present, and eating the amount that is appropriate for you. So that's a huge part of it. Another thing is I've talked to a lot of bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts who are really, really good until they're taken out of their home environment. Like they develop these habits, like I eat fruits and vegetables and lean meats, and I only keep good things in the house. Then I go out to eat, and it kind of goes off the rails. That's no longer a threat. So this is an opportunity to kind of just be on your game a little more. So I think those things are stacked in your favor. So now the question is, all right, well, I look at these two decks. How can I get the best of both worlds? Now, I can't speak to how it is in every single state or country or time point when this episode actually comes out. But one thing that the New Zealand government has made very clear is that you can leave for essential services, but you are also encouraged to stay active and exercise, and they encourage bike riding and walking around your local area. So I think most people, and this may not be the case in something like Italy or Spain right now, or certain states like New York, I'm not sure of the situation there. But I know in New Zealand, for example, there's nothing to stop you from going on a couple of walks a day and just getting your step count up even to something like 5,000, 7,000 is going to be a whole hell of a lot better than if you would literally just stay around your apartment at 600 square feet. You'd be lucky to hit 1,500 steps in a day, which is crazy when you think about it. So I would encourage people to not only listen to our previous podcast episode and try to get in that actual training and making the best of the situation with what's available to you, but also get out in the world, get some sunlight, take a walk. It's a great way to bond if anyone else is with you in self-isolation right now or quarantine, and try to get that step count up to something that is a little more approximating someone who's not sedentary, if that's at all possible. And if not, maybe you can get your hands on, not that I'm encouraging endurance exercise. I want to actually be on the record for saying I discourage endurance exercise for no rational reason otherwise than I just don't like it. Yeah. And I feel it's morally reprehensible. And you can quote me on that. But this may be a time, not for endurance exercise, but just to keep your activity levels up. Maybe you get a spin bike, get something in your house that you can do that, being on the hamster wheel is definitely not ideal, but it might be better than not being on anything.
Eric, can I say, I don't give a shit if you're wrong with anything that you said when it came to the Hazda or the Amish. I found that shit fascinating. Different cultures through time, present or past. And even if you take a look, so this is still, post-industrialization. We're talking Germany. The film is Fritz Lang, Metropolis, his masterwork. If you take a look in 1930, I'm just talking right now, where people were far more active, and also the food availability, the price of food has gone down, just a variety of different things. It depends on what type of food we're talking to, but yeah, there's just a scene, and they weren't like, the director wasn't like, hey, let's get some jacked, lean extras for this one particular scene. It was just a gymnasium. It was like kind of a thing where the whole community was participating. Probably in the shot, there's several hundred people. So it's not a small amount. So this, if even his goal was to get just physical enthusiasts at the time, he exhausted everyone. And when they're running, Eric, I don't see a single soul, male soul, that's like above 11 or 12% body fat. And they're just doing some very regular things. This isn't like a specific, let's show people getting lean and mean. It's like, this is an average citizen in Germany in 1928, you know? And so I do think it is quite interesting how we're all faced with different obstacles. And I've been reticent to share, not my own personal perspective, because you kind of said that. And I can identify with you, Eric. We're sick in the mind. Where right now, this is a tremendous opportunity right now that we're given. We're, challenging some of that stress that's placed upon you. There's that concept. I think it does originate in Greece. I could be wrong here, but positive stress, where I believe they spell EU and then stress, STRESS.
Eustress.
Eustress. Yeah. Where some of these things that are happening, the shocks to our system, where it forces us outside of our comfort zone. We have to come up with new solutions. I go back to the episode of the Strongman episode with Alan Thrall and Joey Zatmir, where I kind of identify with that, where there's a high variability. You know what I mean? Like, where some people, when you're too rigid in your ways, it could kind of almost set you up for failure. Kind of what you said, like you have your home situation. I'm used to buying, I'm making this up, but my 6 magic foods, Oh shit, now grocery stores, everyone, it's packed up. People don't have access to this. You have to wait in lines. You can't get what you normally get. You're at home. Everything has changed. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, I went from a very controlled environment to chaos. But kind of thriving in chaos is in and of itself a unique skill set. Where strongman, kind of the idea, and I see it in Allen. This might not be a standard, but just he's always ready to roll. He's always ready to lift. He's always ready to try out new things. He's not thinking to himself like, oh, are these comp plates? Like, is this a calibrated weight that I'm using? What's going on here? He's very adjustable, and even he released a video where he spoke about some of the changes he made that were very practical. I thought there was a high utility to his video, how he lost weight. And he said at the start, where we all feel this, as coaches, it's not helpful to state the obvious. Oh, you want to lose weight, calories in, calories out. It's like that's not descriptive of anyone's individual journey or their process or their paradigm or what they need to do actually to get from where they are to their goal. So he shared some of his perspective, some of the small changes he made that had a profound effect over time. Cool. But kind of adopting almost that mindset where I see some of that utility where you're ready, not that you're waiting for things to kick off, but I messaged you, Eric, where for the workout, where you're doing the at-home workout, like you film one outside because, hey, it films better. And then you're like, I'm going to film the same shit I showed on Instagram, the at-home workout. I know part of you was thinking, this is kind of cool. Like, I have to make new adjustments. There's that novelty where there's a new training approach I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to think about this a little bit. And sometimes when you get too complacent, when things hit and you're completely surprised, you're completely not prepared. You're unprepared for the situation that's about to unfold. So I think it would probably be helpful for us to talk about maybe not the different mentalities, but the different components that will make up someone having a successful, let's say, relationship with their food in these trying times where, once again, as you said, the Amish, they're not a monolith. Lifters, they're not a monolith. And I do think of that episode, I do find myself reminiscing as you're talking now to that episode with Cliff Harvey, between those two kind of camps of people and how, some people, once again, this might be hard for them. Some people might be thriving. And even amongst those that are suffering currently, it's not all the same problem, right? So there could be a multitude of effects going on here, different stories, different personalities, different situations, different starting points, like this is kind of rough. And I did say kind of a blanket statement because when you're talking to, thousands upon thousands of people, I said in general, unless you're overweight and you do want to lose that weight or you feel it's your priority right now to lose weight. If you're a bodybuilder and you're looking to maintain your muscle mass, going at maintenance, or maybe, depending on your activity level or what your goal is, a slight surplus is probably a good idea. But there's some people right now, Eric, where it's like, shit, man, I'm looking at my clock right now on my watch that ain't there, and it is right now April. Summer's coming, bro. I got to get lean. And they're 20, 30 pounds away from their goal. I want to then talk to the people, different strategies, because you brought up a few, really a bunch of different gems, but a few key points. Kind of you're the bringer of your own destruction. You rot by your own hands and you rot your own destruction. You're making your own plate now. Before you could kind of pass the buck. You have that social aspect where there's that learned helplessness, like that groupthink that occurs. They ordered pizza. I guess I'm gonna have some. But now, in ways, you have more control of everything else. Like if you think about it, when you go out to work, when you're at school, these are all environments outside of your home. Now, actually, you're in your most controlled environment. There are variables outside of your control, but inside your little pleasure dome, it's your Xanadu, my friend. So I think if you set people up right now, maybe with some more practical tips from coaching people, I do think there are certain parallels, Eric, with some aspects of bodybuilding. Kind of, I go back to the Brian Whitaker, and I reference some of the episodes because I said this, Eric. They're not my children. I could play favorites. We're sitting in that, and like afterwards, sometimes we talk. I'm like, Eric, you heard some of that shit? I'm like, that was a good episode, man. Brian, what are you saying? Woo. Like this. I look at Brian and I think to myself, this is a successful man. And I don't mean by, his degrees or that he's set up situations that allow success to take place. And so I think there are some parallels probably with coaching bodybuilders. But yeah, I loved everything you said. Maybe some more practical takeaways for people listening. They're like, Eric, their hand, here's my phone right here. Their hand shaking. They're looking at that Pizza Hut, I assume is an American chain. We have it here. Their fingers shaking, Eric. It's trembling. They're on the precipice of a disastrous choice. Help them out right now.
Well, I'll say some people can't even order from Pizza Hut right now. Like the pizza chains in New Zealand will not deliver right now.
No way.
You go to grocery stores. Yeah. Nothing.
Okay, this is a pandemic, Eric. I didn't realize the extent of what we're going on here. This is chaos, my friend.
Yeah, man. Only essential businesses are open right now. So you can go to the grocery store for food and corner stores and pretty much nothing else here in New Zealand. Wow. But it totally depends on where you're at. There are states in the U.S. where you can't order pizza, but there are places you can. Yeah. So I think this is a really good opportunity to establish structure. Now, we talked a lot about anti-fragility in our last episode and trying to be the Hydra, where one head's cut off and two grows in its place. And I want to emphasize that structure is not antithetical to flexibility. We're not talking about rigidity. We're talking about structure, okay? And you can build a structure with flexible wood. You can build a structure that has plug-and-play pieces, but it's still structure. So this is a great opportunity. At least for some weeks, what your life is going to be like. You know where you're going to be. You know where you're going to wake up. You know who's going to be in your home. Because no one else is allowed to be there, and you're not allowed to go anywhere. It's going to be you and your home and your family or your friends or your roommates, and that's it. Only people who are there with you, right? And for many places, that the only food you got available is what you can get at a grocery store. You're in control. Now, the beauty of this is an opportunity for you to set up the habits that will support your goals. Like you said, Brian Whitaker, while yes, objectively, he is highly successful if you look at the fact that he's a professor with a PhD in economics and he's a multi-time champion, all that stuff, definitely very successful. But it's part of the reason is that he has established structures and behaviors and habits that have allowed him to reach his peak potential. So you can do that as well, whatever that potential is for you. So for example, nutritionally, I think you probably want to have a consistent number of feeding times per day. I don't care if you like the whole intermittent fasting thing or if you like eating more meals per day, whether it's 2 meals or whether it's 6, you do you, but keep it consistent. And we have data to suggest that consistent meal times reduces snacking outside of them. It becomes one of those kind of hard rules. I'm putting quotes around rules because it's no physiological reason that eating an extra meal is a problem if you control calories. However, your behaviors will improve if you have specific quote unquote rules that you follow. You won't have to make choices. You won't be faced with decision fatigue. And you will also be able to support those rules. So for example, if you know that you're going to eat 4 meals per day, one of them looks breakfasty but high protein, one of them looks lunchy but high protein, one is a primarily post-workout protein thing that you do 3 hours after lunch, an hour after you've trained, and then you have a semi-late dinner, or maybe you have a fifth protein serving right before bed. But if you've got your structure, now you can shop at the grocery store for your structure. And you can go and get primarily fruits, vegetables, maybe some wraps and some legumes and beans that you put in them. You're making bits of lean protein. That could be plant or non-plant sourced. It could be animal sourced, whatever your personal preferences are and your ethical considerations for eating. And you have just what you're going to eat in the fridge. Now you're no longer walking by Subway and smelling these cookies, because guess what? Subway's probably closed. And if it's not, you shouldn't be outside anyway. Just go to your essential services. And I don't think Subway cookies count. So this is a great opportunity to have a stronger why and more control over your environment, to then take even a step further and construct your environment. Instead of being the hand that wrecks your own destruction, you can be the hand that guides you to salvation. So you set up a structure. X number of certain meals, and you have an archetype for each one of those meals. Now, some people, I can already hear them, they're getting overly OCD. They've got their MyFitnessPal out, and they go, well, how many calories should I eat at each one of these meals? No, sir. No, ma'am. We will not do that. Create the structure, but here's where the flexibility comes in. If you are more hungry on one day or another, let's say it was a training day and you were able to get in 2 walks, but the next day you had to do a whole bunch of work telecommuting via Zoom, and it wasn't a training day, you might have 1,000-calorie difference in your total energy expenditure. But hopefully you'll be able to just use the flexibility in portions control. And that's what we want to get. We want to get you to create a structure that results in auto-regulation, that has you walking around at what your Amish body fat percentage should be. That's what I'm talking about. Not a dieted state, but just a healthy homeostasis, if you will. I think that is the opportunity presented to people. So I think because this is an emotionally charged, scary situation, a lot of people have made very unnuanced positions. I've seen some people who jumped on us for saying, hey, don't quit your prep just yet. We don't know when the shows are going to be canceled. And they're like, should someone be dieting at all? Isn't that going to compromise their immune system? We're all going to die. And I'm like, hold your horses, Timmy.
Yeah.
That's probably an extreme situation. If you have an extreme energy deficit, you're in a state of low energy availability, and you're shredded, and there's a global pandemic, probably not a good idea. But it's not like we need to be just avoiding at all costs any type of deficit or cut. If you're someone who is let's say you've been trying to lose 30 pounds, you can still train, you can still go on walks, and you're still buying your own food, and you got 25 pounds left to lose, you don't have to hit pause on that. I see no problem with you still following a moderate, healthy, reasonable approach. And of course, if you do show any symptoms of being ill, get out of the deficit, go see a doctor. But I think we can all approach this as reasonable adults. So if this homeostasis, this auto-regulation that you achieve by eating primarily fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins, and then breaking that up into these meals, and then auto-regulating your portion sizes based on your hunger at each one of these meals, and you're able to keep your activity up, and you listen to our last episode and you're actually training, you may find that could result in a deficit that doesn't feel like a deficit, and you may lose some weight, and then your hunger will come back up. You may find that you auto-regulate yourself to a leaner body composition, or perhaps you are one of those fit tea influencers who is maintaining a crazy lifestyle to stay at a single-digit body fat percentage, and you're like, you know what? You kind of described me, Eric. I don't want to be that anymore. This is an opportunity to figure out where you might float up to, which will probably ultimately be healthier, still reasonably lean, but allow you to get better outcomes in terms of health and fitness, which ultimately is your goal. You've let Instagram take over your life. It's your opportunity to take it back from the gram. So yeah, either way, I think this is a great opportunity to develop habits. Or let's say you are someone, you do have ambitious long-term goals, but maybe you can't perfectly align to them now. So you're going to hit pause on the actual quantitative outcomes. I'm not going to try to lose weight right now, or I'm not going to try to gain weight in my hypertrophy phase right now because I can't train super hard. But what I will do is I'm going to create these habits, and I'm going to create the structure so that when I can get back to going full bore, when I can put my foot on the gas pedal again for my weight loss or weight gain goals, I have the habits to support that. Because in the end, whether you're trying to lose a pound a week or gain a pound a month, the same, say, 4 meals per day with a fruit and vegetable serving at each one of those, and then just adjusting portion sizes will be the same. And that's the habit that's going to support that. And I can tell you from experience with myself and my clients, that makes a lot of these transitions and change of realities much more easy to deal with when they come about, because you have these intrinsic things. So, for example, when I travel and the first thing I do, I get to some place and I try to go to a grocery store. If not, I'm going out to eat still at my normal meal slot times when I can. And if we go out as a big group at some conference and everyone's ordering drinks and food, I'll have a drink with people. I'll order whatever the food is that's there, and it might be way more than I planned on eating. No big deal. If I have a meal left in the day, it might just be protein or I might not eat. Or the next day, I'm probably not going to eat as much at breakfast because I just won't be as hungry. But that's the beauty of having this flexible structure, which I think everyone is in a perfect position to actually develop based on their situation and their goals.
Eric, you're saying right now, in this moment, people have a wonderful opportunity, kind of like what you said at the start of the episode, which I was disappointed that Dwayne, I know you listen, so I'm just going to speak to him personally. I forgive you. It's okay. I know you're saving the world with your Instagram story, so it's okay. But we have a wonderful opportunity now to reframe everything, our relationship with food, take a hard look at ourselves, think, do I want to be hucking this shit the rest of my life? This fit tea? Probably not. Because honestly, as soon as you reach, that undefined point, like age point, I don't know, for fit tea influencers, it's like 22. 22 now is being 52, where you're washed up. No joke. There's actually a thing, Eric, like there's that social media app, TikTok. Do not download it, even though I think with your dance moves, you would crush it. Anyways, it's like populated with 13-year-olds that have 20 million followers. And now millennials. So if you're between 20 and 30 or like 35 or whatever, you're basically regarded as being a boomer. Like you're regarded as being, oh man, you're the last generation. I'm like, wow. But you have a unique opportunity. Everyone has a unique opportunity to reframe things, do a little introspection. Now you have more time. So I find often, at least in some of my coaching, just observing individuals and how they operate, we're very busy with life. You know what I mean? With the work, with our obligations, social obligations, with training, 6 times per week, holla at your boy. That we don't have that time to either meditate, look within ourselves, try and see everything that we're doing and judge, is this really what I want to be doing? How can I improve this? What are some things I like? What are some things I don't like? What do I need to do to actually get to my goal? Kind of think about everything and, dress everything down before you can build it back up. And I actually, Eric, I want to get off that high horse a little bit, but I understand everyone's different. I said, I'm actually liking this. That's why I was hesitant to share my own personal perspective, because actually, if we talk about stoicism, and this is the way it got translated, our boy Marcus Aurelius, where he said essentially, be tolerant of others but strict on yourselves. It's like, I fully understand. It's like the restraints you place upon yourself are not the expectations you should have on other people. And I actually see that. I think when you said some people on social media are Timmy that jumped at you with that not so nuanced position saying, should people really be prepping now? I'm like, wait a second. If that individual is more adherent and more compliant to their goals, they're a better citizen overall because their mental health is better now that they have that flexible structure to excel in their given discipline, and they could thus better serve everyone else. Is that a net win or a net loss? Timmy, I'm going to let you figure that one out. But I do personally feel that in these times that I have seen that with some coaches, where it's like, it worked for me, therefore it's got to work for you. It's like, these are trying times, man the hell up. I'm like, oh shit, that's your advice right now. And I do think some of that concept, a little bit of forgiveness or forgiveness of self, where I forget who was the person that posted it. It's been making the rounds where, someone said essentially, Eric, always wanted to start your dream job or like pick up that instrument or like, start writing or whatever. Now's your time. You don't want to do it. You were never about that life or whatever. And then someone responded, it's like, hey, we're all going through something right now. Give yourself a break. Actually, having that all or nothing mindset might not be helpful. And I would put forth, and I'm not sure if you agree with this, Eric, that if we, for those listening, sometimes when we get outside of our own personal bubble, so introspection is very important, but when we extend beyond our own personal suffering, that's when we could do something truly great. And actually, when it's easier to be compliant, because let's say we talk about the concept of being a pillar in your community, a pillar in your household, this is a tremendous opportunity to show by example, to lead by example, and actually be the change that you want to see. And when you extend your goal beyond yourself, we kind of spoke about that concept a little bit, where we tend to see that in some weightlifters in certain countries, Iran, Russia, China, where they're representing, it's kind of national pride. So now it's
Hmm.
not just personal pressure, but it's like, I'm doing this for my country. Maybe it gives them an increased sense of purpose. And I could say, actually, in a small way, part of when I brought up where your boy Eric, he was helping me, I got diced. Okay, by my standards, 16% is diced, because that's dice for me. Lost that weight, lickety split. But I actually found, and I told Mike that when I was recently, Eric, in January, down there staying at his place. He's very gracious. He's a true homie. I'm staying there. I'm in Sacramento. And I kind of wanted to be a positive example, because I know how this shit happens. Where for myself included, it's like, let's say you're in a household, everyone's ordering pizza. Yes, I'm bringing up pizza again. Pizza Nova, if you want to reach out to us, I'm not gonna say no. Um, where they, it becomes harder for you, because again, you see other people acting a certain way, and then you kind of want to follow it in. Be in with the group. And so sometimes when you're in a situation where you can maybe influence other people, oh shit, now it's not just about myself. And so I had no problem, Eric, when we order that Hawaiian barbecue. Okay, some of that chicken, dark meat, very tasty. They put in a cup of rice. You said that, which is the damn truth. People don't even realize where the calorie bombs are when you eat out. They included like a mac and cheese, like mac salad, so it had mayonnaise. It was just, Eric, it was the calorie bomb. Like, you look at the chicken, you're like, all right, this is kind of cooked in not so good oil. You look at the plain rice, I'm like, that's just a cup of rice. Ain't hurting nobody. Some steamed broccoli, they probably put oil in it. Cool. Like, it goes from like questionable. We can make this work, to the macaroni cheese bomb. That's the thing you got to throw out, okay? Or that's the thing you got to avoid or pass on to the homie. I tried my best, Eric. I'm not going to say what the end results were, and I'm not trying to be some pariah here, saying like I was the person holding the flag, but it felt good to try, to try and do something outside of just myself, where it actually made it easier, I could say, for me to be compliant, because I'm like, hey man, if this guy, I know this is important to him, if you can start this process, hey, let's do it. Because I've been there before. I've been in the opposite situation where, let's say us eating out together, or I brought up the example of Alberto Nunez for training as an example. When Alberto's training his ass in the gym, his ass off in the gym, do you think to yourself, wow, I should really wuss out today and not train hard? Or like, that's inspirational. I want to follow suit. Like, let me try and train at that intensity, not with his weight, but he's out here leading by example. So I think it's a unique opportunity for everyone now, for their to be a good influence on their loved ones on social media. Maybe you do it for the social media clout. I'm not judging in these times, but just being there for someone other than yourself, and you might discover that it becomes easier for you. I don't know.
I tend to agree. I think you juxtaposed quote unquote leading by judgment with actual leadership, which is by showing people that you can find a way forward, and also then the whole key element of being empathetic to everyone is in their own unique situation. And some people are in a way worse situation than I can't leave the house, which, like you said last episode, is a thing. And it is something that we're all sharing. But I was actually, as you were talking, I thought, you know who actually crushed this? Mike Tuchscherer had an excellent share on his. This is going to be like a week old when this comes out. But I'm just going to read this out loud. He crushed it on his story today. He gave two scenarios, A or B. A, if you can't come out of quarantine in shape, shredded, with a new business, and having read a dozen books, you just didn't want it bad enough. What's wrong with you? You had all the time in the world. Or B, the perspective of, this is a tragic and stressful time for people, and if you want to stop brushing your teeth and start eating pie filling straight from the can, you go right ahead, because hashtag self-care. And then he said, or, just maybe, hear me out, a pandemic and global quarantine is a complicated thing, and an either all in opinion is silly and probably at least as harmful as is helpful. People should, as if I'm qualified to give such advice, do what they can and show themselves some compassion and understanding as needed. The person who lost a loved one or whose business failed is probably not having the same experience as the introvert working at a toilet paper manufacturing plant. Coaches will be well served to pay attention to what their clients need and not adhere to weird siloed positions. I'm willing to bet most of you realize that already. Right? You know what I'm saying?
He's the
Like, I
man.
think He is the man, and always providing that nuance, always providing that context, and most importantly, not only showing compassion towards others, but also yourself, and realizing that this too shall pass. This situation is only one you really are an authority on is the situation for yourself. So being in a position of judgment from a inherently unique position, probably not doing anybody any help. I think you're just making yourself feel good. And hey, other people need to feel good too.
We're all in this, Eric, together. Some would think otherwise, and there are those that have said this is a hoax. And to that, I just say, interesting. I think in this episode, because again, there's so much to talk about as it relates to our current situation. And spoiler for everyone out there, I want it to be resolved as quickly as possible, same as everyone else. It's likely to continue at least for quite some time, or a little bit longer, let me say. So we'll have more content. I do want to talk. So we've spoken, Eric, about the training perspective, basically how to be resilient in the face of this crisis. Nutrition, so changing or maybe questioning your nutrition paradigm, something that would be maybe slightly more sustainable, doing what you can, having some compassion for yourself and for other people in their situations. And then also, I think it would be illuminating for us to have that conversation, the business one, where we talk about it.
Business.
Yeah. We're just going to tell people there's one weird trick that they need to do to make their first $1 million. And that is inherit money from your father who was a millionaire. I spoiled it. I apologize, but them's the rules, kids.
Well, there is one other weird trick, but that requires you to send me a private message.
Yeah.
And I will send you a direct link to my PayPal account. And you can send me any value between $10,000 and $10,001. Yep. And I will then give you that one secret trick that I unfortunately cannot release online globally because it would probably just wreck the economy with everyone making dollars hand over fist at the same time. So, but if you want to get in on this, you know where to find me.
Yeah. In the DMs is where it always goes down. And what I like, Eric, about that is the humility always shows where you said between $10,000 and $10,001. You weren't saying, send me $20,000, which they can, for the record. You didn't want to say that out loud. And you didn't even insinuate it. So I'm just going to say the donation can exceed that very narrow amount because value is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh, it's not narrow.
Oh, yeah.
I'm allowing people to give the minimum amount.
Oh, right.
Like just $10K. Right. Which,
it's a steal.
From my understanding, that's pennies for most people.
Right.
It's a lot of pennies.
Yeah.
But all the way up to another whole dollar on top of that. So it's flexible pricing.
Okay.
To really respect the fact that we all have different economic realities. Yeah. And I would never ask someone to give more than $10,001 because I don't want to. I'm not trying to get money out of this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you something that's appropriately priced, appropriately valued, but still flexible within the economic realities of individuals. But like you said, if you truly want to give me $20,000, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah, because, there's tipping in other fields, and this is just what it is. And some might say, hey, Eric, that's not market value, what you're offering compared to what you're charging. And to that, I say, Eric's in a league of his own. He's in his own market. And when you're in your own market, you set the price. It's called a monopoly. Look it up.
That's right. And not only is a monopoly something that is technically illegal in the United States and would be broken up by the government, but let's positively frame that. It's also a fantastic game to play with your family on the holidays. I'd like to choose the race car.
Oh, well, let me just say that everyone now is basically on holidays, so maybe that's an idea. Get together with the family, respect social distancing, use the hockey stick, as they say, or a barbell if you have one at home, just to keep. I assume everyone has a barbell at home. Because again, we could just make safe assumptions about the culture. Neither myself or Eric in our house. I mean, I know you have access to a barbell. I don't want to say how you did it, but we don't.
It's in my car.
Yeah, it's in your car. Why is it bloody, Eric? Is my only question.
Well, okay. Some people were fighting over toilet paper. Other people were fighting over other objects of life necessity, like barbells. Yeah. And I'm a nice guy, but I'm not going to be that guy without a barbell.
Right. Everyone has.
I'd rather be dead.
Yeah, everyone has a limit. We've all seen.
Much like the person who I got the barbell from is now. I'm sure it was just a car accident.
You don't check. And sometimes a mystery, the unknowable, one can never know. And I think it's just safe to assume the best possible scenario happened. They're fine. Um,
Let's just say I'm not going to be throwing shade at Danny Lennon. I understand that drastic times
yeah.
require drastic measures. Maybe I can relate to him a little more now.
Sure,
That's all.
sure, yeah. Let me just say, your stare still you have a joyous glow to your stare still, which is a marked contrast from our previous guest. That we don't have. Again, I'm not looking to get sued right now, Eric. No one at Iron Culture is looking to get sued. So I'll just say that everyone has a limit, and if anyone's watched the seminal classic Taken with Liam Neeson or Taken 2, anyone that's pushed their logical limit will snap, and there are consequences.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think most people probably have a background as being a CIA assassin.
Yeah.
So don't push people.
Yeah.
CIA was hiring a lot of people in the 80s.
Yeah.
There was a lot of governments getting changed forcibly, okay?
Yeah. You think there weren't a lot of people employed? Eric, let me ask you this now. Because we're going to wrap this up in a neat bow tie before they donate the 10 grand. Is there anything you want to circle back to when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to adherence, when it comes to making it through this damn thing and just, the quivering hand, it shakes and I'm looking to be a steady Eddie that I should keep in mind? Because I think you've given numerous nuggets. Let's use a little alliteration there. Numerous nuggets of knowledge for the people. What do they need to know?
Would you say I gave numerous nutrition nuggets of knowledge?
Yes, sir. I think that's a completely accurate statement. It's knowledge.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate that. And I think let's sum it all up because instead of having just a nugget here or a nugget there, let me just dump it all together on the people. All right. If you can be active, that will probably help you regulate your hunger. So get to a certain level of activity. Take those walks if you're allowed. If you literally can't leave the home without being assaulted by police, and maybe it's worth trying to find some way to be active in your home. I'm, again, not endorsing endurance exercise, but a spin bike used for the purposes of replicating regular activity, we could allow that to occur in the cult. Secondly, this is a great time to leverage the fact that you're the one putting your food on the plate. You're the one making the food. You're the one going to buy food at home. You're going to save money. And you can choose to buy the things like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, all the good stuff that your mama told you to eat. Now you can do it. You can also create a flexible structure in which you eat the amount of the portion sizes that satisfies your hunger and also gets you all the proteins you need to recover from training. Create this structure, be more active, train based on our last podcast where we discussed the training element of the current reality we all find ourselves in. And you may find that you can develop habits that will support your goals in the future. And you'll be better equipped when we are back in the gyms, back doing the damn thing. So I think that's a really key point. And then to kind of circle back to our original topic would be, hey, telehealth is being catapulted in the future.
Yeah.
All kinds of professions are now going online and using video conferencing, and we can very much expect that there may be more legislative policies, enforcement of existing policies, or new policies to come, and more top-down regulation and potentially more requirements. At the very least, we can see that within weeks, the industry has changed, and we can expect that to continue to some degree. And it's probably smart to make sure that you know what your scope of practice is, stay up to date with what you're allowed to do and the best information, and make sure that you're prepared for the changes that come in the industry. So that's the face of nutrition. Things are changing. What we can do has changed, but you can stack the deck in your favor.
Wait, Eric, where can people sign up for the webinars, bro? Come on now. I'm in. $1? A couple seminars? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And when this is out, there should be one tomorrow, but you can sign up for it at nutritioncoachingglobal.com.
Yeah. And we'll make it a point, top description on social media. We'll give it a little shout out. If you're confused and maybe you're listening, honestly, Spotify, I'm not sure if they have the top link. I honestly, when I took a look, it seems a little confusing. iTunes, they have it. If you're not following Eric, it's in his link tree. So don't just look at the profile. I mean, you can look at the profile pic. Take some time. Scroll through some of the photos, but then go to the link tree and click on the link and go ahead and sign up. There are only 5,000 spots, and if you miss out, you miss out. Eric was actually telling me literally with the infrastructure the way it's set up, and I know like some things are like that, where you can't accept more people, you're done lucked out then.
Yeah, it's not even like made up scarcity.
Yeah.
That actually there is a limit.
No. Eric, this a quick aside, this is funny. I'm not going to name the person, but holy shit, just some of the marketing tactics that you see online. I get it. Everyone's trying to make a dollar. But this person. So you.
Scarcity on PDFs is the best part.
Yes.
I can only print so many 25 kilobyte 4-page ebooks. All right.
Eric,
the internet has a limited number of bytes.
This is the one. So I understand the idea of creating scarcity to motivate people to sign up. Like, hey, we're having a limited promo, sign up because then it goes back up to the regular price. Cool. That makes sense. I understand. This person, Eric, is exactly what you said. We could only sell so many of these. Like, there's only so much availability of this. Not as limited because we want to create scarcity and, give you a value, incentivize you to try and pick it up. There is a limited amount that people can get. And someone said, wait, you're like online, there's a kilobyte limit? Like, what's going on here? And they got roasted.
Listen, Adobe called me.
Yeah.
Mr. Adobe himself. Yeah. Ken Adobe got me on the phone and said, hey, we're running out of PDFs.
Yeah.
And I said, Ken, really?
Yeah.
How many of my ebooks can I sell? And he told me 300. And then the price will go up as we run out of our PDF supply. And I'm like, well, here's what we got to do. Sorry, guys. Ken called me.
Ken can be such an asshole. Don't be one if you're listening to this episode. That's one of the tiny lessons. Eric, I want to thank you as always for being the co-owner, co-host, co-pilot of this ship of the imagination. For everyone listening right now, you can help us out in some small way if you so choose. On iTunes, you can leave a rating and review. You could be on YouTube. You can like the video. If you like the video, leave a comment. We do our best to try and respond. People seem to be enjoying the duo episodes. I can't wait to see the collective smile on their faces when Dwayne, The Rock, Granite Johnson, joins us for an episode. And we'll see everyone every single Monday from now to eternity.